This is Elric IT. Welcome to today's video in which I will show you how to configure static routes, the different types such as default routes and floating static routes. What are static routes? Well, a static route is a way of manually telling a router how to get to a network by configuring the subnet, mask, and a next hop. The next hop is the device that knows how to get to the desired network. For this example, I will be using GNS3 and I will explain a little bit about the topology that we have on the screen so you can have a better understanding. On the left side, we have router 1, which has a connection to router 3 and router 2. Router 1 also has a loopback interface with the IP 10.1.1.254 with a 32-bit mask. This loopback interface, I will be using it for network connectivity test. So when we have already everything configured, I'm gonna be pinging all the networks using this loopback interface IP as a source. So at the right side, we have the router 2, which has three interfaces, three local networks that you can see here on the screen that have these PCs connected, so we can do some tests while using these PCs. And both of these routers have a router 3 connection, which is going to be like a slow one connection that we're going to use for two purposes. The first one is to provide internet access, because the router 3, which you can see, is connected to a cloud. This cloud has a connection with my physical network adapter, so it's actually connected to the real network. I will be using it for network connectivity to the internet and doing some tests also. The second purpose is to use this router 3 as a backup path to the router 2 local networks. In the case that the link between router 1 and router 2 falls, I will be using this backup path. So this will be used for an example, and well, I hope I clear everything. So let's begin with configuring simple static routes so we can have network connectivity between router 1 loopback address and the three local networks that live at router 2. Let's begin. Well, we are now here at the router 1. Let's configure a route. I'll explain to you what the syntax of a static route is. The first command is IP route, which starts a static route. The syntax consists of three spaces. The first one is the subnet that you want to reach. In this case, one of the three subnets that we want to reach is 172.16.0.0. That is a 24-bit mask, which is 255.0. And then the third space that we have to fill in the static route is the next hop, which I said is the device that knows how to get to the desired subnet. In this case, it's router 2, which has the IP 10.0.0.2. Then we're gonna do the same for the two other networks that are left, which are 192.168.0.0, same with a 24-bit mask, and 192.168.1.0, also with a 24-bit mask. All are with the same next hop because all these three networks live at the router 2. So let's make sure that the router 1 has already the entries in the routing table with the show IP route command. So we can see the three entries in the routing table. This means that router 1 already knows how to get to these networks, but as we know, network connectivity has to be in both ways. So we have to tell router 2 how to get to the loopback interface address of the router 1. Let's go to the router 2. Here we are. Let's first verify that we have the networks connected to this device with a show IP interface brief. Okay, I'm missing the IPs in the interfaces, so I'm gonna configure them very quick, which is one. Okay, it's done. Now I'm gonna save changes because I had already configured these interfaces, but I guess I restarted the device and lost the configuration. Well, let's verify again. Brief. There it is. Okay. So as I said before, I have to tell router 2 how to get to the loopback address of the router 1. Let's do the same IP route command, and then the route, which is 10.1.1.254, which is the IP of the loopback interface of router 1, which has a 32-bit mask, which is like this. And the next hop in this case is 10.0.0.1, which is the router's 1 interface. Okay, let's verify it with a show IP route. Okay, great. So by now we should have network connectivity between router's 1 loopback address and the local networks at router 2. Let's recall the IP addresses of the PCs that are connected to router 2. So I'm gonna do a test to all of these 3 PCs from the router 1 loopback address as a source. Let's do it. Ping 172.16.0.1 with a source loopback 1. Let's see. Great, it worked. Let's do repeat 100. So yeah, as we can see, we can reach the first network. Let's try the other 2. Great. And the last one. Well, as we can see, configuring static routes is very simple. It's just about running one command, but the thing is that as many networks as we have is the amount of static routes that we have to configure. So that's why summary routes exist. In the static routes, you can summarize the networks, so you can, instead of having multiple line commands, you can have just one to state all the routes that you want to reach. In this case, I will be configuring a static route summarizing the last 2 networks, which is 192.168.0.0 and the 1.0. So let's do it. Configure terminal. IP route 192.168.0.0, and then how to summarize is in the mask part. You have to choose a mask that will be like binding or so the 2 networks or the 2 or more networks that you want to reach and summarize. In this case, I should be using a network mask of 255.255.254.0. This will reach the network 0.0 and 1.0. The next hop will be 10.0.0.6, which is the router 3. But let's first verify that router 3 already knows how to get to the local networks at router 2. So IP route. Okay. It has already a network connection pointing to router 2, which is this IP. I already summarized here the two last networks and already configured the first one also. So if I do a show IP route in the router 1, we will see the same network, which is a 23-bit mask, which will cover these two networks. So this is a way of summarizing. You can do it with many more networks. So instead of having one line per each network, you can have just one that will cover 2 or more networks. This will ease up configuration and will leave you a more clear or more clean routing table. In this case, we have router 2. Let's go back to the GNS3 topology. We have router 2 that has two possible ways to reach the loopback interface at router 1. The one that is currently being used is the link between router 1 and router 2. What if the router one way to get to it, I mean the link between router 1 and router 2, breaks or something that it's no longer available? So how can we use another link and be able to communicate with the loopback address? Well, in this case, we will have to configure a floating static route, which would act as a backup route. A floating static route is a way of telling the router to specify the way to get to the same network that you already know by other path, but in case the other path, you can specify that it acts as a secondary route to trigger when the primary link goes down. So how to do so? Well, we have to specify an administrative distance at the end of the static route. It's going to be the same command, but with an administrative distance higher than the currently used in the other link. Static routes have a default administrative distance of 1, so we can use from 2 up to any value that we want, which is going to be higher of 1, of course. So there also has to be another next hop, of course, because we're going to be using a secondary link, which is router 3. Let's do it. Let's go to router 3, to router 2, because here's the static route that we're going to configure as floating. conft IP route 10.1.1.254 with a 32-bit mask. The next hop, which is going to be 10.0.0.9, and then here comes what makes this static route as a floating. We have to specify an administrative distance higher than 1, because 1 is the default value of a static route, which is already configured through the router's 1 link. So let's do it, and then if we check the routing table, we're still just going to see one route, because routers only choose the best route to get to a network. What I mean by this is that it only shows the best route. So if it has two routes to the same network, it's going to choose one of those two. The best one is defined by the lower administrative distance, which is 1. So in case this connection is lost, the router will automatically assign to the routing table the secondary route that has to this network, which is the one that we just configured with an administrative distance of 2. So let's just verify that the router 3 already knows how to get to the loopback interface of router 1. So IP route. Okay, we can see that it doesn't know how to get to there, so let's configure it. Conf t IP route 10.1.1.254 and the next hop. So well, we have now the whole way to get to the loopback interface of router 1 through router 1 and through router 3. Currently the router 2 is going to be using the link between router 2 and router 1 because it's the shortest way, and also, well, it has a lower administrative distance. Let's break down the link between those two routers and see if it goes now through the router 3. I'm gonna turn down the interface that connects to router 2, which is facility 0/0, shut down, and let's see that this value is going to change, and now it's going to be installed the route through router 3. We'll show IP route. Okay, it's still showing it because, well, GNS3, as you can see, does not actually take down the interface. So what I have to do is literally deleting this connection like this, and then now we can say that the link is broken. So let's see if it already switched the network in the routing table. Not yet. Let's see if it appears as down here. Show IP interface brief. Well, it still shows as up. In a real life environment, this wouldn't be the case because GNS3 sometimes acts a little bit weird. But let's do the last thing, which is accessing the interface and shutting it down. Shut down. Okay, they should do it. Interface brief. Now it's down. Okay, so let's see the routing table. Okay, finally we can see that the path to the 10.1.1.254 network, which is the loopback interface address of the router 1, is now through the 10.0.0.9, which is router 3 interface. So let's see if we can actually reach it. Okay, I must specify a source. I'm gonna specify the source of one of the local networks, which is like this. I already should have no problem. If I have, so I will do a little troubleshooting to see what's happening. So the path is through router 3. Let's see if there's something wrong with router 3. Route. Okay. Okay, you already know what's happening. Router 2 is sending traffic through router 3, and then router 3 is sending the traffic to router 1. But since GNS3, as we saw previously, will not turn down the connection actually until you shut it down manually. So router 1 is, still thinks that this connection exists between router 1 and router 2, and is trying to send traffic through this link, because as long as router 1 sees the link up, he will keep the static route in the routing table. So is this, or also let's find it out. Okay, no, it's actually down, but I guess I haven't configured the floating static routes in here. That's what I forgot, because indeed, well, GNS3, yeah, took it down, or I don't know if I shut it down. Let's see. Okay, I shut it down manually, but let's configure the floating static routes in router 1 to get to the local networks at router 2 through router 3. Let's begin an IP route. Okay, I made a little mistake here. I didn't specify the administrative distance, so I must delete these routes first. T, no, oh, T, here it is, no, no, no. Okay, so I'm gonna configure them again with administrative distance of 2. The third one, which is this one, and here it is. Okay, it was hard work because I made a little mistake, but let's see if it's already in the routing table. Okay, well, this one is already in here because I had previously summarized it, but well, we can delete it. No IP route. Of course, it wouldn't matter because it's gonna take the more specific routes that we have already configured. Okay, let's do the test once again. Okay, let's do a test to see where the traffic stays. Okay, it goes to the router 3. Then this router house has something that is not passing the traffic. Okay, so the route is missing in here to router 1. Okay, there it is. Let's do the test once again. It was missing the route in the router 3 to get to the loopback interface address of router 1. So let's do once again a test. Let's do another trace. There's something wrong with it. It's not working. Show IP route. For some reason, even though I'm configuring the route, it's not showing in the routing table. Let's see what went wrong. IP route. Okay. I'm configuring the next hop with a wrong IP. The IP should be 5, which is the router 1 0 0 IP address, like this. This one is the interface that is connected with router 3. That's what I was missing. So now we should not have problems. it's our router 2 and we are going to do the test. Okay, now we can see that it works properly. Well, after all this, we made it work. Let's just try it from the PCs. Pin 10.1.1.254. Okay, it's working on PC1. From PC2 also is working, and last pin. Okay, great. So we have now finally have this working after some troubleshooting and so, because I was confusing between tabs in the console, and I was also missing some routes that I had to configure. So finally we have this already configured and have the network connectivity that the static routes provide us. I hope you have already learned how to configure static routes, the different routes, and well, see you next video. Hope you enjoyed it.